the brackets are set. The madness is here. Pelican Brewing is ready for tip-off. Today's Daily Ticker brought to you by the independent, innovative brewers of the Oregon Coast.
It's so good.
Joining us now, this is how you know it's March Madness time. When Tom Hudson's on the show, you know it's time for the madness to begin. The longtime voice of Gonzaga basketball, Tom Hudson, at Voice of Gonzaga on Twitter is where you can go find him. Tom, good morning to you. We got a lot of Gonzaga fans that listen to the show, and we were talking about the bracket reveal and where everybody's seated and how it all worked out yesterday. And there's some Gonzaga fans that listen to this show, Tom, that are a little hacked off. They felt like they didn't get the respect that they deserved from what they accomplished this season with their seeding. How did Tom Hudson feel about where Gonzaga was placed in the bracket?
Great to be with you guys again. I'll say that first. I'm going to do my best to coach Few and say, hey, don't ever take these things for granted, because it's a long, hard, arduous task to get to where we are. So from that standpoint, you're looking at it and you say, okay, hey, we're back in the tournament, and this crazy run continues, and that's awesome. And then the reaction sitting there watching was kind of, oh, okay. And I think that was kind of the feeling in the room a little bit, was not, people weren't like the team. I don't think nobody was like really hacked off or, screaming and yelling and, oh my gosh, this isn't right. But I do think that there was kind of a feeling, after we won those last 4 games and our metrics were so good this year, which was kind of interesting, top 10 in the net and top 10 in the Ken Palm. Sneakily, our offensive numbers have been really good. Our defensive numbers have crept up a little bit. So I think a lot of us were thinking kind of 7 seed, maybe even a 6. So yeah, it was a little surprising to see it. And then, obviously, as everybody says, you don't necessarily want to be in that 8-9 game, because if you win that one, then you've got to face one of the top 4 teams. But, I think for this group, there was a little bit of okay, let's go do this. I mean, you've got to beat these guys at some point if you're going to win a championship. So, instead of sitting around and worrying about it, let's go ahead and move forward. So, yeah, but it was interesting. I thought there were a couple. I know North Carolina's been the low-hanging fruit on this one, but I thought there were a couple along with that one, where you were scratching your head thinking, okay, when I saw the Tar Heels pop up early, you thought, this draw might be a little bit interesting all the way across the board.
Tom, I'm curious where this season kind of ranks for you with Few and the coaching job he did. I know they've had some all-time great teams, and there's been many teams to choose from of the best teams of all these groups. But this was a group that, throughout this season, we'd kind of monitor and keep up with it, and we'd have Gonzaga fans saying, not necessarily our best team, but they ended up winning the conference again. They beat St. Mary's in an incredible defensive performance. I'm just curious where this ranks for you of watching Mark Few, the coach, get the best out of a group.
Well, I think as the season has moved on, it's getting there to be one of the better ones, because I think, one of the things that's happened with this transfer portal, and I just talked with Coach about this yesterday in our coaches show, is, just the automatic assumption, right? We go and get Caleb Battle out of the transfer portal. He was one of the top guards out there, right? I mean, he scored 1,600 career points. Mike Ajayi, we got him from Pepperdine. He averaged a double-double last year. And I think you look at it and you say, okay, you add those 2 guys, and automatically you're just going to be great because you brought most of your starters back. And then we hammered Baylor in that first game, and then everybody's talking, oh, this is a Final Four team. But, I think it took a little bit of time for those guys to adapt to our system. And Coach said it, too. He said it took us as a staff a little bit of time to understand where these guys fit in our program and what roles we can put them in to be successful, individually to help our team be as good as it can be. So I think that they've been able to figure that out, and I think they've done a really nice job here, over the last probably month or so of starting to find the right, pieces together. Starting Braden Huff against St. Mary's in the championship game in Las Vegas, I think was huge. Braden can really score the basketball, and he's been playing better defense. Nobody's ever going to, maybe mistake him for, I'm a Houston guy, Akeem Olajuwon, right? We're going to go way back to my childhood. But I think he's playing a little bit better defensively than he did last year. So that was a big help. And, I think those transfers have started to get a little bit comfortable. So I think they've done a really nice job as a staff of getting this thing moving forward and getting us to a point where, we're feeling really good, because, the sneaky thing is, and we've talked about this way too much in-house, but, we're playing West Virginia in the Bahamas, and if we get the ball across half court, we win that game.
Mm-hmm.
We're up 18 on Kentucky. If we make a layup, we had 2 wide open looks that we miss, and you beat Kentucky, and now all of a sudden you're what would we be, 27-6, and we'd probably be a top 4 seed, and everybody would be talking about how great this team is. But,
right.
Even those 2 games, right, and even UCLA, we had an opportunity down the stretch, and there was kind of a weird call that went in that one. So, we're 3 or 4 plays away from, having 3 more top 25 wins and being in a really good position. But I think they've done a really, really good job.
Only game you didn't mention there, Dirt, Oregon State. Oregon State just beat the living hell out of them in Corvallis. That was didn't hear anything.
Well, and then Gonzaga returned the favor a few days later with an 87-point win, I think.
No, that didn't happen, right, Tom?
That was our biggest loss of the season, guys, by the way.
Was it really?
We're really going to rub it in, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, 8 points.
Well, I think that was probably Oregon State's biggest loss of the season, too. So you guys traded off, I would imagine.
They beat us by like 40.
I would hope that was their biggest loss of the season. Tom Hudson is our guest, the voice of Gonzaga basketball, at Voice of Gonzaga on Twitter. I think the run now was, 9 straight years in the Sweet 16, which is just remarkable. It's not just that they're going to the tournament every year, whatever, it's 20-something straight years. It's that they're going and going on runs, it's seemingly every time that they're there. I saw a metric the other day, Tom, I was looking through this. Nobody knows how March Madness will shake out, but basically for teams that go on deep runs, they have to be elite in one category. And as you mentioned a few moments ago, Gonzaga checks that box offensively with where their numbers are at on the season. Defense, though, you say is ticked up. Where is the trust level in the defense? Because if they're going to continue this trend of Sweet 16s, you got to get through Houston potentially in round 2. And how do you feel about that matchup and where the defense is at this time of year?
Well, and I think that's been one of the sneaky ones, over the years. I mean, everybody's known Coach Few for his offense. And Adam Morrison, who's my color analyst, we always laugh. He's like, hey, man, when I was playing, we just rolled the ball out and we ran, and that was it, But I think you talk about those 9 straight Sweet 16s, and a lot of that coincides with, more of a focus on the defensive end. And, I think the defense has really come along. And, again, it's been kind of interesting to see, Emmanuel Inocente has been a really nice add. We talked about those other 2 transfers, but he was, as a freshman, an all-defensive team member at Tarleton State down in the WAC in Texas, and he's come in and really provided us with a spark. He didn't play a whole lot early on in the season, but he's been a really good perimeter defender for us. And, and I think we've been getting a little bit more in the paint. I think, Micah Jai's been flying around doing some stuff. So I think Coach said the other day, I think we're 26th in the metrics defensively, and he pointed out, those are the type of numbers, along with an offense that's in the top 10, that help you make deep runs. And so hopefully the guys continue to buy into it. Like you said, it was a masterful performance against St. Mary's. When we've seen this team lock in defensively, it's been really scary. So hopefully we're able to do that. Because like you said, if we're able to get past Georgia, obviously Houston, their defense speaks for itself. And I think, I've had a chance to watch them a few times this year offensively. They're really good too. So you're going to have to figure out a way to score against them if you get to play them. But like you guys said, you're going to have to figure out a way to slow them down a little bit too. And I think this team is starting to believe that they can live up to those kind of games to be able to keep moving on.
Tom, I know you're getting ready for Georgia. I could ask you just your thoughts on the matchup, but the tournament can be weird. It can be unpredictable. It's tough to gauge. I kind of want to ask you a futuristic question while still using this tournament. Gonzaga gets another bid. You got a handful of other teams that are going to be in the Pac-12 next year in this newly aligned conference. I'm just curious, your thoughts on the future of what that conference is in men's basketball specifically, and how challenging this could all be next year when some of these teams start playing each other more and more and more.
Well, yeah, it's really going to be interesting, right? Because I do think that the way that the league looks right now, and again, you look at the teams that are currently in the Mountain West, that are playing in the NCAA tournament, that are going to be a part of the Pac-12. You look at Oregon State, you look at Washington State, they're playing in the postseason. I think the road gets a lot more difficult. Because I think the way that the league sets up right now, and obviously not knowing who they're going to add and what's going to go on there. I think top to bottom, it's going to be better than the West Coast Conference, right? And so, for us too, the interesting thing, us going to Corvallis this year for the first time, that's the first time I've been to Corvallis, and I've lived in Spokane since 1996. It's kind of crazy, but going in there, and it's just a completely different look, right? And it's a different feel than maybe some of the other places we've gone. I can only imagine going to, Logan, Utah to play Utah State, and, even going to Fort Collins to play Colorado State. Those are going to be some different looks. There are going to be some more difficult trips, I think. So, yeah, I think, over the long term, hopefully it challenges us to continue to get better. And then I think for the league as a whole, from a men's basketball perspective, challenges everybody to get better, right? Because I think you're taking, a lot of the best teams, obviously joining Washington State and Oregon State that had good years, and you take the best teams from the Mountain West for the most part, and then throw us into the mix. And I think it's going to be a great basketball league. The only thing that you guys know as well as anybody following any of this stuff is, with this transfer portal and NIL deal, sometimes trying to predict the future. I mean, you're just closing your eyes and rolling the dice and hoping that the right number comes up. But yeah, I think the way that it's constructed right now, it's got a chance to be a great league.
Yeah, it's March when Tom Hudson's on the show. The Zags are back in the March Madness, and they're in the tournament again. We'll see if this is another long Gonzaga run, and can't wait to see how they fare against Georgia in round one, and if they win that one, how they go against Houston in round two. Tom Hudson, Voice of Gonzaga, at Voice of Gonzaga on Twitter. Go give him a follow. Tom, have a great call. Thanks as always for the time, and hey, if this is another deep tournament run, we got to catch up again soon.
Hey, guys, absolutely. Thanks. I appreciate it. And let's plan on talking next week. I'd love that. Or the week after, even on the way down to San Antonio.
Love it.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back,
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There
All right,
you
guys.
Tom Hudson.
Great talking as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff from Tom Hudson, the voice of Gonzaga.
Good friend of the program, that Tom Hudson.
Every year, man, he's like clockwork. There's a few constant staples on this show, and him being on the show in March is one of the staples. Let's talk about Gonzaga because they're the only team that we know is going to be in the tournament as basically a lock at the start of the year in the Northwest. Oregon's had very good years, but they're not at Gonzaga's level. 9 straight runs to the Sweet 16. 9 in a row. If they get there this year,
it's going to take a lot for them to do that.
You'd have to beat Houston in the second round, but that would be a decade straight in the Sweet 16.
Well, you got to beat Georgia first.
You do have to beat Georgia first.
Overlooking the SEC team that was one of those bubble teams.
SEC sucks. They're going to smoke Georgia in round one.
You see what Pitino said, by the way, yesterday?
No, what did he say?
He wants the Big East and the ACC to basically become a mega basketball conference.
Merge together so they can have a 20-bid league like everybody else.
The SEC bids, I think, are pissing people off of getting 14 of their 18 in, and so people are trying to come up with ideas to counter it.
Well, some lingering thoughts on the bracket reveal. I'm going to get to those coming up next. The Daily Ticker, as always, brought to you by our great friends at Pelican Brewing. The brackets are set. The madness is here. Pelican Brewing is ready for tip-off. It is brought to you by the independent, innovative brewers of the Oregon coast.